Because of the late start and the fact that the other panel went overtime, we're going to reserve our initial opportunity for public comment after the education panel. Now, I know some of you have gotten up and stretched your legs. I'd ask that everyone be seated so that we can begin. Our first panel member is Keith Johnson, President of the Detroit Federation of Teachers. Because of his unique position, I believe Mr. Johnson will be joining us on two panels this evening, the education panel as well as the union panel. Keith Johnson is a graduate of Henry Ford High School in Detroit. He attended Wayne State University with degrees in secondary social studies education and secondary administration and leadership. Mr. Johnson started his teaching career with the Detroit Public Schools in 1980 and taught for 15 years in total, most recently at Finney High School. He is married to Shanice Johnson. They have 3 children. He became president of the Detroit Federation of Teachers in January 2009 and is serving his 3rd 2-year term. Keith Johnson. Next to Keith Johnson, we have Russ Ballant. Russ Russ is a member of the Detroit Library Commission and former president of the Library Commission. Russ is an activist, has always been an activist. He's one of the lead plaintiffs in the litigation challenging the constitutionality of the emergency manager law, which we will be in court on tomorrow. He has a Master's of Arts in Industrial Relations. He is the coordinator of the Master of Social Justice program at Marygrove College. Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. Russ Ballant. And Elena Harada. Everybody knows Elena. Elena and I have, well, I think I got a ticket, but she got away. Right. But then she went and got arrested a few weeks later. We've been in the protest together for some time. Elena has a Master's of Arts in Industrial Relations, coordinator of the Master of Social Justice program at Marygrove College, adjunct professor in the Master of Social Justice program, a fighter and an advocate for education in the city of Detroit, as well as a strong advocate for voting rights in the city of Detroit. Next we have Sherry Gay Denego. Sherry has about a 10-page resume, but what is important to know is that she is a continual and constant voice advocating for the education of our children here in the city of Detroit and across the state of Michigan. She is a Detroit Public School science teacher. She has also fostered community partnerships to host education summits and town halls with local and federal elected officials. Sherry Denego. No, excuse me. And I don't have a resume for Helen Moore. Helen Moore, who I have met with in this room on countless occasions as it relates to the fight for civil rights, for civil justice, for voting rights, for education here in the city of Detroit and across the state of Michigan, and she is still fighting today. Everyone, round of applause for Helen. We'll begin with a question to Keith Johnson. Keith, you can probably tell me better than I can how long the Detroit Public Schools have been under emergency management. And we've had emergency financial managers, more than one. We've had emergency managers, more than one. Allegedly, because of the failure of the elected school board to effectively govern, allegedly, and allegedly to come in and to improve the Detroit public school system. What has, in your opinion, been the true effect of the litany of years of emergency financial management and emergency management for Detroit Public Schools and for the Detroit Federation of Teachers?
Well, first of all, thank you very much, Herb, and to ask me for even inviting me to be on not one but two panels. I think that in order to accurately answer this question, you must put it into its proper context. While we have only been under an emergency financial manager / emergency manager for 5 years, it is important to note that for 13 of the last 15 years, we have been under the auspices of the state in one form or another. It is also important to note that when the state first confiscated this school district from this community, we had, and please listen, a $103 million budget surplus. We had an outstanding superintendent in Dr. Eddie Green, who was a master of curriculum. While our scores were not where we wanted them to be or needed them to be, they were on an upward trajectory. We were fiscally solvent. We also had a $1.4 billion capital improvement bond waiting for implementation that had been held up since it was passed in 1994 because Governor Engler would not release the authority for the issuance of the bonds. So by the time the first hole was actually dug in the ground, that $1.4 billion was only worth about $980 million. And then when the governor's cronies got a hold of the contracts, we ended up with a $127 million Cass Technical High School. Now mind you that at the same time Cass was getting built, Walled Lake Northern High School was also under construction, a 300,000 square foot palace of education built for about $60 million. Now you tell me, why does a school like Cass Tech cost $127 million? You tell me, why does a school like GSA cost $122 million and doesn't even have a gym or a pool? You tell me how Renaissance High School can cost $110 million and not have a swimming pool. It's because people got paid and we got fleeced. Now, moving forward, in 2009, Governor Granholm, a Democrat, imposed an emergency manager upon us because we had a 320, or at that time, a $289 million deficit. So, but let's look at this in perspective. Within a 10-year period, we went from a $103 million surplus to a $289 million deficit, and that was under state control.
That's right.
Except for 2 years. When the school board had control of the district for those 2 years, they inherited a $200 million deficit generated by the state. So it was the creation of this deficit was not through the inability or unwillingness of the elected school board to make the right and practical decisions. It was because of those who were designated by the state to run the school district, running it into the ground, not only financially, but academically. Prior to 2009, when had you ever heard of the school district of the city of Detroit finishing at the bottom of the NAEP test? It had never happened. It happened once the state gained control of our educational system. It is important to know that since we've had an emergency financial manager / emergency manager, we have closed over 79 schools. Can't remember the exact number. I know it's more than 79. We have lost over 40,000 students. And on top of that, to add the ultimate indignity, and y'all hold on to your seats for this one. You may remember that a number of us, myself, Reverend Wendell Anthony, and a number of other people, went around, came to churches, neighborhoods, and everywhere else, advocating for a $500.5 million bond for capital improvement. When Roy Roberts took over this district, he gave away 15 of our schools, but not just any 15. The bulk of the schools were schools that were either completely rebuilt or significantly renovated between the 1994 bond and the 2009 bond. $60 million for Central High School. $60 million for Southeastern High School. The $54 million brand new state-of-the-art Mumford High School. $22 million in renovations for Denby High School. $27 million in renovations for Henry Ford High School. $8.2 million in renovations for the Bethune at Fitzgerald. And the $32 million Brenda Scott. You put it together, $252 million of new and renovated construction given away by an emergency manager. Then you add on top of that the deficit has continued to grow. Yeah. So after saying all of that, my summation is this. The emergency manager has not worked. And we look at everything that has been done to our children and to this community. This may not be politically correct, and I'm glad we aren't in a church. But I sum it up in 2 words. This was urban pimping. That's right.
Thank you, Keith. Russ Ballant.
Yes, sir.
You are the former president of the Library Commission, currently a member of the commission, and I don't believe a lot of our audience understands the unique relationship that the library has with the Detroit Board of Education. What, if any, effects have resulted to the Detroit Public Libraries as a result of the Detroit Public Schools having an emergency manager?
Well, when Roy Roberts was appointed in May of 2011 by the recently installed Rick Snyder as governor, he targeted the Detroit Public Library for takeover in the following way. And you should all know that Public Act 350 of 1901 created the library as an independent municipal corporation. And it manifested its independence by having, and it separated the library system from the Detroit Board of Education. But it let the Detroit Board of Education appoint library commissioners and allowed the president of the school board to be a member of the library commission, but it also made the city the fiduciary so that all our financial transactions go through the finance department and our budget gets approved through the budget department of the city and goes through city council. But the commission makes the recommendation. So it's clear that it's a somewhat complicated governance relationship, but it's also clear that the commission, by its state law, has full municipal corporation authority over the body. The emergency manager, in his aggregation, attempt to aggregate power, decided in June 2012, he issued a letter on behalf of a friend of his on the commission, who I will say publicly and have said publicly I consider ethically challenged, to assert that he had the power to remove commissioners from the Library Commission and to appoint people as he saw fit. In other words, he didn't cite a law. He cited his own perception or his own desire to expand with a less than stellar band of accomplices to begin to take over. Fortunately, the Library Commission, anticipating this possibility, already had a legal memorandum prepared that said he couldn't do it, and we handed it to his general counsel, and he walked out. But he began making appointments and attempted appointments until the petition drive suspended the law in 2012. We then temporarily got, and let me just say by way of background in case some of you were aware of this, they used a temporary majority that they had to suspend the library director because they wanted somebody else to be the library director.
What?
There's a matter in litigation that I'm not going to discuss, but they wanted somebody else to be the library director. And so that all those efforts were undermined when the Emergency Manager Law PA4 was suspended in the fall. And that caused this library commissioner to spend a lot of time in the Upper Peninsula and Upper Michigan trying to convince everyone in this state of Michigan why we needed to defeat that law. And so we came back and we initially had a legal decision from 3rd District Judge Annette Berry saying that the school board could in fact appoint to the Library Commission. And that was in January of 2013. Such an appointment was made. The library, the emergency manager fought that decision, and eventually they got Judge Berry to issue an opinion that completely reversed itself, that made factual misstatements such as the library is a component of the school district. I've already explained why that's fraudulent. She knew the law, and frankly, I'll say this to her face, and I hope there's an opportunity where it's appropriate to do so, that somebody influenced her, because she knew what the law was when she issued her January opinion. Judge Annette Berry. Remember that when it's time to vote, okay? All right, and she gave all power. She said he can do whatever he wants to the commission. He can remove without cause. The school board never had the authority to remove without cause. The school board had no involvement with the library except to appoint the commissioners. The commission did not report to the school board and so forth. So she granted powers that the school board never had. She expanded the powers. So that's a challenge, but the emergency manager continues to make the assumption that he or she has that power. I really didn't know I was going to be talking at length about the library, but that's important. But I would like to, because I've been involved with the Detroit Public Schools since I enrolled my first child in 1993. And I was involved in every takeover, fighting the takeover, the CEO, Ken Burnley, John Engler era, and onwards. And I saw everything that Keith laid out in terms of the improvements that were going on in the 90s, and I'll add enrollment went up every year in the 1990s. Every year in the 1990s. As soon as the CEO model came in, enrollment started dropping every year since. So I've watched that. I fought that. I saw our schools damaged by the Ken Burnley. I saw it closed up. I saw it dismantled. I saw physical harm to our students in our school, where I had the privilege of serving as an LSCO officer. I've given a lot of thought to why this is going on, and basically I think there's a motivating political economy. This isn't just bad judgments, it's not misinformation, but it's a systematic concept of undermining public education to transfer the public education dollars to private for-profit corporations. And 80% of the charters in Michigan are for-profit corporations, and the ones that are non-profit are being managed by for-profit corporations, or at least their real estate deals. This is transferring public dollars to not only the corporations, but to the hedge funds in Wall Street. New York Times has done the stories on these, how the hedge funds are behind all of this. It eviscerates collective bargaining from teachers' unions that mostly support Democrats. It has the consequence of reducing educational quality and the reduction of services, including special needs students in this city. And in conjunction with area foundations that began exercising social power, not just philanthropy, but social power, and a media that consciously sought to weaken voter power in this city, starting with the Detroit Public Schools in Detroit, and later other school districts, it laid the basis for undermining voter authority over all local governments in Detroit, because it wasn't challenged when it was being done to the school board. By weakening real public education and the educators and the support staff, this weakens the base of the Democratic Party, the destruction of our city, the stripping of our assets, because emergency management isn't financial, it's asset stripping. It's wealth transference. Whether it's a Belle Isle, whether it's DPW, Rizzo started picking up garbage in my neighborhood today, a week earlier than they said they would. I asked the garbage driver, I said, were you a city employee? He said, no. They promised jobs to city employees. I questioned that. But look at the legal history of Rizzo, and I won't say anything more than that. And then finally, they're aggregating political and financial benefits to the base of the Republican Party. Since the Reagan era, the Republican strategists nationwide and in this state have had a strategy of consciously going after, and they call it defunding the opposition, of destroying the base of the opposing party. Because we know that the future of the Republican Party, if all was equal, they would lose. And they're going to lose in the future. The demographics tell the story, all the voting rights. Hence we see this accelerated campaign at the national level to destroy voting rights in the entire country. And let me just tell one quick anecdote, because sometimes this stuff needs to be humanized a little bit. And I tell this story in every forum I can about the Detroit Public Schools. When Roy Roberts came here in May of 2011, there was a forum put together, for reasons I'm not clear why, for special needs parents to talk to him, because it assumed that he wanted to talk to them. There were 75 parents there from across the district. Kettering, West Wing, School for the Deaf, School for the Blind, everywhere. They came there, and the first person who stood up to speak said, my special needs student was promised a culinary arts education, but has been sitting in a cafeteria for 3 years, getting no education whatsoever. And he said, why are you coming to me? He said, I'm not the school board, go complain to the school board. He says, I do not want to hear about your problems. The parents were stunned. She stood up to hand him a business card. He said, stop right there, I don't want your business card. If you have something to say to me, you can stand in line behind 4,000 other people. And he's repeated that throughout his time in this district, in high schools and community forums across this city. I don't care what you think, and I don't want to hear from you. That's emergency management in the city of Detroit. Let me just say this in conclusion. If this was being done in Mississippi, everyone would call it what it was. Why can't it be called what it is in Michigan? Why can't we shame the people who know better in this state that are standing on the sidelines? They call themselves community leaders.
Yes.
But are standing on the sidelines. They know the analysis. They know that the school districts in this state that have been under control of emergency management are African American. They know the school districts that have been dissolved in this state are African American school districts. They know the cities that are under rule. We are not raising this consciously. Now, we know outstate some people might not be receptive to that message. But we have to tell the truth in our own communities as to what it is. And frankly, we have at the federal level an administration and under Arne Duncan that is aiding and abetting this dismantlement. They gave $100 million to 2 charter organizations to accelerate the process of charterization of urban public districts from coast to coast. We haven't challenged that. We have a media that's completely silent on it. In 2009, in this media, and I realize I'm taking a few minutes more perhaps than I should, but when we ran school board members at large in 2009, the News, the Free Press 2, 4, and 7 had the mayor's races, they had the charter commission, they had the city council races. They took the school board races off, and Steve Henderson wrote an opinion in July of 2009. We do not want Detroiters to know there's a school board election because every vote for a school board member legitimizes them. We do not want to legitimize the school board, we want to eliminate it. And so the media, as a group, made a conscious decision to silence the fact that there was an election going on in this city so that they could aid and abet the takeover of our district. This same media, and I'll just end with this. This is just something that I wrote about 25 years ago, and it's bothering me that nobody's picking it up. This same federal administration is supporting political parties in a country in Europe right now and ready to start military operations on their behalf. And when that political party marches on the street, they're wearing Nazi insignia. You figure it out.
Thank you. Thank you, Russ. Next time we will put Russ on the preacher panel. Elena, when we go to court tomorrow, one of the arguments that I will personally make is that the EM law is a violation of the First Amendment. Because when we elect individuals such as you, we are electing you to be our representative, to be our voice. And through emergency management, our voice has been taken away. You are an elected school board member without a voice. What effect has the lack of a community voice through you as the vessel and other elected board members had on the curriculum of the Detroit Public Schools and the governing of our public schools?
I'll make some really specific, I'll give you examples. I was asked to help a child enroll at Western High School who was told that she couldn't go there by the administrator who met her at the desk. She was told that she couldn't go there. So the child went over to Lissette, and Lissette called me, and I walked her over with her father. They had just arrived. The child had just arrived from Guatemala and didn't speak any English. And her father had been here for several years. And through the very difficult process of migration for families in Central America, the father had little by little been bringing his family, and this is the last child that he brought here, and she was 17 years old, and he hadn't seen her in 15 years. Wow. And so he was very happy to have his family together, but he basically had been sending money home for a child that he hadn't really gotten to know. So he was very happy about getting her enrolled in school, and she was told that she couldn't go to Western. So I walked over with her to get her enrolled, and just pushing through. As a former parent at Western and as a community person than a school board member, but a school board member is incidental to that. That's what representation means, is that you're a person from the community. So the principal didn't deny her admission, but when they brought her, I asked to see her counselors and her teachers and if they would all come there and meet her, because she was very shy. She was from the rural area. They came down, and people were very, very happy to see me as a former parent, and happy to greet her. But the assistant principal told me that there would be no one to translate the sciences for her. There would be no one to translate. She would be sitting in class like before the days when we had bilingual education. So we're back to before 1974. Something that we struggled hard to get. Bilingual education was to the Latino community what African-centered curriculum was to the African-American community. In other words, we called it the right to be. Except that our children were sitting in a classroom not understanding anything, as African-American children sat in a classroom not being reflected anywhere. We were basically being taught someone else's history and someone else's language. So this child still sits there without translation. Yesterday, I had a mother call me to accompany her to a middle school, well, it's now a K-8 school, where the school is still a DPS school and trying very hard to hang on, but they're being dumped with all the gangbangers, they say, from the Phoenix Academy, which is an EAA school, which is at the same time trying to say that it's on the rise in enrollment, but getting rid of its gangster kids. And so the principal is saying that she's at a loss to be able to protect her students from one school pushing its students into another school where they're basically being told to come and enroll in the last month of school. That's correct. So these are the struggles that we're having within Little District 2, which is still, under the school board districts, it's still District 2. Despite what Skillman says, it's not District 6, it's District 2. We still do have a school board, and we still do have schools. So what I'm saying is that no one hears the struggles from the very bottom, the people who are silenced by way of immigration status, language, economic status, or just in general poverty. So when students are suspended for weeks at a time, and there is no hearing for them to get back in, that's more fodder for the Educational Achievement Authority, so that they can say that we have these failing children and we're going to need a place to hold them. They closed Southwestern High School, which we still owe a lot of bond money on, and the board went up to Lansing with an actual alternative proposal to go to the Emergency Loan Board, which is a little tiny provision in Public Act 436, Section 19, which on the face of it is still an illegitimate law, but we were able to, through our very able leadership under Lamar Lemons, get a buyer for the building and follow the law within the 5-day period that we have. Remember, we don't have a secretary. She works against us. We have no clerical support. We all do everything on our own. We do not get paid. Everything that we do on our own. And we managed to come up with a counter proposal and get up to Lansing in front of the review board. They looked at us like we had come from sub-Saharan Africa or something to get there. And they changed the law in front of us. They said, well, if this interferes with the mayor's plan. I said, what mayor? What? And what's a mayor got to do with our schools? And what plan did he have a right to make? We had somebody to save Southwestern from demolition, and instead, it's got to be torn down because it got in the way of the mayor's plan. This is what we're being told as school board members. After all the trouble that we went to, after everything that we did to be able to legitimately follow an illegitimate law. So, all that to say, everything is being done in the service of destroying the potential of Detroit students. we're basically looking at not just a system where somebody can loot the library or somebody can loot the schools. No one can learn to read and write in these circumstances. We have now been under the emergency manager since '99, so a second and a third and a fourth grader has been living in this chaos for her whole school career. 2009, right? Well, 99, 2009, right? Right, go back. So, but we're in a situation just like the city where a debt has been created that we did not owe, and now we're being forced to pay for that debt. So, in the fall, those of you who have children in school, know people with children in school, we're asking you to stay away from the EAA. We're asking you, if the school board, we're being stopped from running for office, and that's another whole issue, because the philanthropic community wants to control who's going to be on the school board, just like they have done with the city council. And so they are actually hoping that we will not be back on the school board. And if we are blocked from being on the school board, then they'll be able to go through with the privatization of all of the schools. And this does not include any kind of advanced education or any kind of solid or equitable education for the poorest of Detroit children. So please pay attention to what we're asking you to do from whatever medium you may hear from us on. Thank you.
Thank you, Elena. And this leads into the next question for you, Sheriff. Keith Johnson talked about the number of school closings, the significant number of public school closings. Elena talked about the emergence of the EAA schools. In addition, we've seen the emergence of a significant number of charter schools. What is the correlation, or is there a correlation between emergency management and the emergence of EAA schools and charter schools? And what is an EAA school?
Well, exactly, apartheid. That was a quick answer. Let me just say this. First of all, thank you, Herb. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, President Al Garrett. It's a great opportunity to be here as an educator, as an advocate for education, and just listening to the panelists, all of which I've had an opportunity to invite as the education chair for the National Congress of Black Women to serve on a panel that I've hosted, several of which, the last one of which you served on, September 18, 2012, over at the UAW Vote Center, Understanding PA4. We had that with the purpose and the intent of understanding where we are, how these laws originated, what the inception was with respect to the governor and the takeover of our schools. And so the goal has been to foster a sense of unity and a sense of urgency, and to help get out accurate information about what we're facing. And so I think it's important for me to kind of lay the format of where I come from with this information. So 9.5 years in city council working for Alberta, Tinsley, Talabi, and Clyde, Cleveland, and going into DPS and teaching for 6 years. Irma Henderson, Remus Robinson on the east side, begged by Mike Timbush over education at the United Way to come to United Way and to create a job there. Actually, I went to Queen Mother here next to me before I even took the job and said, what do you think? Do you think I should go into this job? And she said, yes, you should, because we need people at the table. And so I went inside that foundation for 6 months, but then they realized that my affiliation with Helen Moore and my affiliation with Congressman Conyers came into question. And so a woman there took over the job that I created, and I was put out in about 6 months. And so we've continued on this trajectory of trying to provide the information to you so that you'll understand it. And I talked about the emergency town hall we had about understanding PA4, but I served on the transition committee for DPS at the request of Anthony Adams. I served on the superintendent search committee. I was placed on the school board unanimously by the school board members, and then I was replaced by the emergency manager's choice, and we all know who that is. But we have a problem in our community. We have some pathologies of our own that we need to address in the black community alone. It's enough of what people outside have done to us, but what do we do ourselves? We allow even worse than what you say, Keith. It's a political prostitution that takes place within our community that allows these egregious acts to continue, because we don't hold the people accountable who have sold us out. And as many people that have sold us out right in our faces every day, and we allow them back into the fold, and then they want to run for office and represent us, but they have not defended, fought for, been in the trenches, or done anything to hold the fight. That's right.
That's why we have Tom Perry running against our
all right. I didn't mean to push that button. But you're right. And so we have to use the tools that we have. In our village, we have people who are able to do a myriad of things to fight in different ways and to defend the fire from different angles. And so mine has been to put out information and to make sure that people understand what the facts are. And so we've heard a number of those facts already. So the strategy has been to educate despite not having a dollar. We fought against a multi-million-dollar campaign. Y'all remember it. I'm in, the blue doors, the blue shirts. I went because in 2008, I was accepted to 2 fellowships, the Obama Fellowship and Education Pioneers. And I went out to the Bay for 10 weeks to understand what would take place with the foundations across the country. I came back telling all of my colleagues in the school, this is what's about to happen to education. And so I started trying to tell everybody, this is what's about to happen, to take over and dismantling of our schools. And so when Robert Bob came, I still got the emails. It's a good thing to say those emails. He said, surely, because he was talking to the foundation community, he had a place for me. And so I've always communicated with all of them, because I think it's important to get in their face and tell them what we're facing. I'm a product of DPS. My son graduated K through 12, a product of DPS, with a learning difference, something that they've thrown out, the IEP of all of our students at EAA. That's wrong. And so that's why I passionately fight against this. EAA is nothing but a failure. Absolutely. Nothing but an opportunity to take public dollars and privatize them. Right. Looking at this picture, no accountability. This sister, I applaud you for taking the time to pass out and disseminate this information. Yes. This picture here, I thank you for writing this article, but the illustration is key. Detroit Public Schools is the heart. And if you kill the heart, you've killed the body. We killed the body. So for us to allow our children to be packed 60 kids in a classroom, for us to allow children with special needs to have their federally mandated education plans to be thrown out, for us to allow ourselves to be taxed until 2035, and they're pimping us. See, that's political prostitution. We should stand up in record number and defend and fight against this. How do we support our own news organizations? How do we support the Michigan Citizen? How do we make sure that we get the truth and not rely on 247 to pump us with information that pit us against each other? It was easy for them to believe the lies about the school board until I started working with them. I worked behind the scenes. We strategized and talked about the issues of why the perception was about, why was it so easy for us to fall into the trap of saying they're not functioning. I know how much money Lamar Lemons pumped into this work of his own dollars. I know how much time each one of these people spend. But why was it so easy for us to believe lies against our people? There's a pathology that exists within us that has to change. We bought it. We bought it. We bought it. Is something wrong? There's a soul searching that has to take place on the inside of each of us. Why did we allow the takeover and the dismantling of our district under Robert Bob, under Roy Roberts, under Jack Martin, and nobody stood up for any of our school board members publicly? There was no outcry to defend them. No, people want to say they weren't capable. They couldn't lead a school district, when really it was nothing but smoke and mirrors. Adam Manning, if you look at the records in the state capitol, he's on testimony saying that it was a lie, the test scores that were purported about DPS. But we bought it. Why? Why do we believe lies against our people? That's our pathology. Justice Sotomayor said that just this week, after the passage and the upholding in the Supreme Court of the affirmative law that was action law that was struck down in Michigan, we look at our record numbers in higher education, we are struggling. We have Wayne State Board of Governors, Board of Regents over UM and everywhere else. But has our higher education African American percentage increased? We have political prostitution and pathologies that we need to address within ourselves. We need to understand, like Russ said, Judge Annette Berry kicked the can down the road. We went to court, I don't know how many times. They had their Honickman lawyers. Clark Hill even came in and helped sell us out. Clark Hill came in. Who? Reggie Turner. So now, Denise Mitchell Ford, so now the CEO model, the foundations trying to get mayoral control in play, and they got beat down, 2010, but now they're coming back. Now they're coming back. And they come back when we remain silent. When we don't stand up and defend our core constitutional rights for self-governance. They win when we allow lies about our people to be told and you don't run to their rescue and stand up. If I have an issue with one of my brothers and sisters, I might take you in the back and tell you about it. But ain't nobody gonna crucify you in public and I not stand up for you.
That's right.
The schools are failures. We went from 200,000 students and now we down shy of 50,000. So we're not class 1. So now you get a letter to Lamar Lemons that says you can't even file a petition to be on the school board because we're going to pick the school board candidates. We're going to pick the state rep candidates. And foundations are building millions and millions of dollars. No primary for the school board members. But we've remained silent. It's not just our fight. Up here, this is all of our fight. And the schools got left hanging. And so now we look at all of labor together. All the workers, city workers, school nurses. Now it's time to really come together. This picture tells it all. But the heart of the matter is the schools. Because if you can kill off a generation of people, the schools is where you do it. We know that prisons are based on third-grade reading scores. And I'm a highly qualified science teacher, so I know how to teach. And I know how to govern my classroom. And I know how to manage my classroom. But somehow we've fallen for the game. And if we allow a generation after generation after generation to be populating prisons, because they're making the money off of privatizing the schools, and now they're getting the money off the prison. So if we allow that, we have to really search ourselves. This coming primary, I'm running. But every race, Atlanta's running.
Husan Berry's running.
Husan Berry's running. You better get in somebody's race and help pull them across the line. Because that's the only way we're going to change this. EAA is a failure, a failed experiment. Covington was a failure before he got to Detroit, coming from Kansas. Who in their right mind would bring a failure to lead over a school system that was supposed to improve persistently low performing schools? We know what this is. Political prostitution. Let's stop it.
Very good, Domingo. Thank you very much.
Michelle Bro is right.
How about that?
Okay.
For county commissioner.
All right. We're going to have an opportunity for public comment. And the public comment, guess what? Is going to be limited to the emergency manager issues. It's not going to be a forum for political candidates. Just want to make that clear. Now, Helen Moore. I think your colleagues have defined the circumstance. And I know that you have been from Lansing to DC fighting for public education in Detroit and across this country. what do you tell a young couple with 2 or 3 grade school age children who are struggling to make ends meet, who live in the city of Detroit and want to know how they can educate their children and what can they do to engage in the fight to save public education?
That's an easy one. Kills all the enemies. Okay, I'm going to behave today. Okay, that's a good question. Myself as a young mother at one time without the gray hair, kind of beautiful too. And 4 children, educated Detroit Public Schools, and myself also. Been fighting a long time and know that we're at war and our children are being destroyed by these so-called people who are saying they're educating our children. What you tell a young couple that perhaps has got children in an area where they don't have resources, where the schools have been closed, where there's nothing available to the children but maybe charter schools or EAA, you tell them to find the closest public school, traditional public school they can find, and get in there and fight like hell to make it better. Because many of these couples have children in 2 and 3 schools. And many of the children have been to 2 or 3 schools and even more. This is the way it goes nowadays, and nobody is satisfied. What we did was drop the ball. We decided that, okay, charter schools perhaps are better. We're tired of public schools because we listened to all the rhetoric against the public schools. We did all the wrong things. And now what we're doing is facing the biggest monster we've ever faced in our lives when it comes to education. The children in Detroit are being misused. They're being misused because their money is being shifted all around. Detroit Public Schools have 4 systems. You all didn't know that, did you? We have an EAA run by the governor and a person who came into our town to destroy our children, Dr. Covington. He's already given you the example of how well he does for what they put him in place to do. He's killed the Kansas City School District. Now, why would you think they would bring somebody into Detroit and call themselves putting an EAA for the 5% lowest students, performing students? Why would they bring somebody like that that's supposed to make a difference? They knew it wouldn't make a difference. They actually set our children up to go to prison. And since, it's true, and since this has been the experiment, we've seen children that were forced to go into a neighborhood school that was only EAA or a charter school because they closed our schools, caused a lot of blight and everything. We've seen all the damage that has been done to our children, not only psychologically, but educationally. Now, was it by accident? No. It was by design. So what in the hell is wrong with us? Allowing our children to be treated that way. If you travel like I do all over the country, meeting up with people and setting up alliances on what's happening in the black and brown school districts, you would have to talk to the parents, the new parents, and people who are not aware or so busy that they can't get it together for their children. You would have to educate them and tell them that the educational system is more than flawed. It's irreparable harm for our children. And if we don't turn this system around, we're going to end up like Louisiana. We're going to end up like New Orleans, who took Katrina, the situation closed down all their schools and set up charter school system. And let me just give you this before I end it, because this is where we're going. In New Orleans, there's about 3 regular schools. They took the charter schools. Everybody makes money off of these children. Now, I work with the parent. Her name is Karen from down there. I also work with Fannie Lou Hamers, a niece from Mississippi. We all work together because every school system that is brown and black is going through what Detroit is going through. Give you an example. Here's how it ended up with Louisiana. Get up in the morning, get my little babies ready for school. 5 o'clock in the morning, feeding them, trying to send them off in a bus. That's only one bus that's got to go through the whole town, around through the rural areas, pick up every little Johnny, every person that's ready, take them to school, get to school 7:30, 8 o'clock, because they're not allowing enough transportation. And they got to go way out, get to school, stay in school, tired, or forlorn, poor little babies in the kindergarten. Then finally 2:30, 3 o'clock comes, and they pick these kids up, and then they go right back around the same district, and then by the time they get home, it's 7, 8 o'clock. This is the gospel truth. How would you treat a child like that? They're doing it in Louisiana, and they're going to do it here. If you don't hang on to your traditional public school system, you are going to lose all that you have worked for and that we're paying for, and we'll pay for to 2035. So you tell those new parents that you better get the closest public school you can get to, and you better work like hell to save your children and to save all these children in Detroit Public Schools.
Thank you, Helen Moore. I want to thank this fine education panel. They have surely enlightened us on the circumstance of public education, not only in Detroit, but in Michigan. And I'd ask that we give them another round of applause. I'd like to recognize one of the folks in Lansing who is fighting for us, Tim Grimal, Democrat Speaker of the House.